Hello. In this video, we will be discussing this article titled The Transitional Stages in the PhD Degree in Mathematics in Terms of Students' Motivation. A disclaimer to begin with, I, Robin Sharma, did not contribute to this article in any way, and I will be just presenting the article and some key messages, what was the methodology that went behind this research. So this presentation is divided into 5 sections: the overview, the methodology, and then the transitional stages as identified by this research study, and the types of students as identified by this research study, and then a brief discussion on the findings. So to begin with, this was a research study done in the UK. The 24 students pursuing a PhD in mathematics that who participated in the study were either from the UK or universities in Europe. Thematic analysis was done by the researcher to identify 3 transitional stages, and also group students identify 3 types of students based on the survival strategies these students used for each stage. The methodology was quite straightforward. 24 students were interviewed at different stages in their PhD. There were 4 groups of students, and this table shares at which point these students were interviewed. You can see that there were some students interviewed at the M-Math level as well, who then went on to pursue their PhD. The M-Math is a undergraduate program, a 4-year undergraduate program in mathematics, where students were involved in a project which had some component, some research component as well. So that was about the sample. The data collection methodology was pretty straightforward. The researcher had one-on-one interviews with students, again at different stages of their PhD. They used conversational technique. They asked different questions to understand the emotional aspects and to understand the difficulties, the strategies used by students during their PhD program. After the interviews, the researcher transcribed all the interview recordings and tried to identify if a theme could emerge from the responses of the students. And they found out that motivation was a central category and a central theme which kind of emerged from the responses of the students. And for this research, they define motivation as the force, influence, enthusiasm, drive, or incentive that directs the students' actions towards the completion of their degree. From the data, after the thematic analysis and after going through all the transcripts, uh, the researcher identified these 3 different stages of a PhD program and called them the adjustment, expertise, and articulation stage. As you can see, the adjustment stage was when the students have entered into the degree and they are coming to terms what the degree is like, adjusting to its nature, probably taking some courses as well. The expertise stage is when students are applying their background knowledge to solve research problems. They're trying to find answers to their research problems. And the articulation stage is the final stage where they get down to write down their findings and write down the results to form a thesis. So these were the 3 stages that were identified. And the researcher also identified some survival strategies used by students across these 3 stages. So at the adjustment stage, the techniques that came out were that students said that they felt a need to take more courses, and they adopted internal and external motivation techniques, where the main other for the external motivation technique was their supervisor. At the expertise stage, students identified participating in seminars, conferences, even outside the university as a way to motivate themselves. And they also identified pseudo deadlines, as in informal deadlines set by the supervisor, were helpful to motivate themselves and continue into the program. The researcher do not make conclusive remarks about the articulation stage as there was not enough data. As we can see from the sample, there were not enough students who were in the final stage of their research, who were in the articulation stage of their research, to make conclusive remarks about the survival strategies adopted at that stage. Now, depending on the different combination of survival strategies used by students, the researcher classified the students into three groups. The II group, where students use internal motivation strategies during the adjustment and the expertise phase. The EI group, where they use external motivation at the adjustment phase but internal in the expertise phase. And the EE phase, where they use external motivation strategies in adjustment and expertise phase as well. Students from Group C did not fall into any one of these categories, since they were last interviewed in the first year of their PhD only, and hence there's no data. There was no data to know what strategies they were adopting in the expertise phase. Other conclusions or remarks that were identified by the researcher in the study were that they identified that the transition from the adjustment phase to the expertise phase could actually be more stressful than the first year itself. And the study also mentions that becoming an independent researcher is one of the most important outcomes of a PhD program. And students who relied on external motivation factors were less likely to become more independent by the end of their degree, whereas students who relied more on their internal motivation strategies, they were well suited to be independent researchers in their field. But at the same time, it's not that all is lost for students who seek external motivation strategies, be it social interactions, be it support from their supervisor. It's not that all is lost for them, but they might face a transition which is less smooth as compared to students who rely on internal survival strategies. So that was about it. That was a brief overview of this article, and thank you for your time. All the best for your PhD.